Claude Monet, 1877, St. Lazare Station, oil on canvas. Now to start with some background. After years of painting the countryside, Monet decided to paint a series of urban landscapes, which gives us our painting, one out of series of 12 St. Lazare stations. Now for historical context, the Impressionist movement is characterized by concern with depicting the visual impression of the movement, especially in terms of the shifting effect of light and color. The Impressionist movement was started by a group of art students. This started with four young men meeting under Charles Gillier, working as students under him.
Charles Guerrier was a famed academic artist. Academic art was marked by the use of historical or mythological subjects, all painted in an idealistic manner. This art style was especially prevalent in the 19th century, with art academies pushing this art style as standard.
This limited the range of art that was painted, meaning nothing new was created.
So these art students were dissatisfied with the academic art teaching, emphasis on the depiction of historical or mythological subject matter with literature or anecdotal options. They rejected the conventional imaginative or idealistic treatments of academic painting.
And eventually, these four students were joined by other students who felt the same way. They would become the Impressionists, starting the Impressionist movement.
This art style can be seen in Woman with a Parasol by Monet and The Water Lily Pond by Monet.
The Impressionist movement is marked by forms dissolving and dematerializing, color overwhelming the forms, no sharp lines, and closely observed effects of pure sunlight.
This was one of only two paintings of the train station that was shown on a bright sunny day. All of the other paintings of his that depicted the station were typically dark and hazy.
The subject of the paintings is Saint Lazare Station, one of the 6 largest terminuses in Paris, which opened in 1837.
40 years before Monet painted this piece.
Yes, and it's the terminus for the first railway in Paris.
A terminus being the last stop on a railway where the train turns to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah. The choice of the train station wasn't just by accident. It is a symbolic of the time period and the many changes taking place in transportation in Paris.
At the time of the painting, trains were becoming major forms of transportation. Trains were now used for everyday use. And later, by the time that Monet started these series, they were used for the middle class to start their vacations, but they were also used by the working class.
The medium used was oil on canvas, which allowed him to achieve the subtle color blending and the light capturing effects that he desired.
Monet used oil on canvas with a mixture of blues, pinks, violets, tans, grays, whites, blacks, and yellows to depict not just the steam, but also their effect on the sight.
Yes, he used to paint out in the sunlight and outside to get the full effect of the sunlight, called in plein air. The artist was Claude Monet, French painter, leader of the Impressionist movement, and had a significant loss of his vision from cataracts later in life.
He developed his method of painting by producing repeated studies of the same motif. When he was in Genève, Monet created the Water Lily Pond series.
Monet's paintings of trains, steam, and industrial activity were severely criticized due to displays of pollution emitted from the trains.
The background elements depict buildings and people of Paris engulfed in smoke.
And at the time, in 1877, critics and the people of Paris were worried the smoke would completely engulf them and their city. One of the patrons was Ernest Hocht, a French department store magnate in Paris, art collector and critic, who went bankrupt in 1877 through 1878.
During that time, he moved his family into the home of Claude Monet. But also around that time, Claude Monet made his painting of the St. Lazare Station, and Claude Monet actually stole his wife.
Yes, he did steal his wife because after he stopped backing him and when Hoche could no longer provide that financial backing and he moved his family in with Monet's, Hoche's wife found herself becoming the second Miss Monet. The second patron was
Charles Dulon, a wealthy collector of Impressionism art and a friend of the artist.
Yes, while not many paintings or photos were taken of him, he was the financial backer for most, if not all, the Impressionists. The themes and the reason this painting specifically from the series was chosen by College Board was
the themes include narrative and art, which you can see by the train moving towards you, but also in the fact that it is a series on many different days, which produces a narrative. And there's also progress. The painting depicts a train, which implements the progress of transportation in Paris.
yes, and Paris was progressing very much at this time while Monet was alive. And here's our bibliography. Thank you for watching.